Based on this title card and music, I half expect Spectre to be a fragrance.
Bond lifts the Day of the Dead celebration setting from about a half dozen movies that came before it, if not more, but still creepy.
The Day of the Dead is a real thing, and there's no good reason that a movie shouldn't utilize it as a setting. I mean, you don't see every Christmas movie for stealing the idea of setting a movie at Christmas, now do you?
Really, this scene just ends up making you look at your iPhone to check the time and go to the IMDb to find out you have 2 hours and 15 minutes left.
A sin about the movie's runtime? Well, it's not really the length of the movie that matters, but more what happens in it, but that's okay. I'm sure you won't bring up the runtime again.
Couch.
Come on, are you really telling me you didn't at least crack a smile when you saw that?
Bond immediately puts half of Mexico City in danger because he just needs to kill this guy.
Half of Mexico City? So 4 million people? That's just excessive hyperbole.
The bad guys in this movie are so excited about being in their super secret evil organization, they proudly wear rings in public.
Because people never just wear rings out in public. You see someone out and about wearing a ring? That shit's suspicious.
Holy shit. Moriarty, Voldemort, and Bond, 3 of the biggest British villains of all time in the same room.
Bond? A villain? What? Am I missing something here?
Smart blood. Microchips in your bloodstream.
The signals they transmit while in your blood cause 10 forms of cancer, but good thing we can track you at any cost.
Okay, so I'll give it to you that microchips in your blood does sound like the kind of thing that might cause cancer. But that's it. It just kind of sounds like it might. There's no reason to assume it has to cause cancer.
I also have a mortgage and 2 cats to feed.
Well, then I suggest you trust me. For the sake of the cats.
Did Bond just threaten to use cats?
Yes. Were you not paying attention?
Bond drove the awesome car from London to Rome, which takes a day if you're driving non-stop, which we know he didn't because he probably stopped to shag a waitress somewhere in the middle of that. So therefore his 48 hours should already be about up.
Okay, so a day of driving. That gets us to 24 hours. Then let's allow a couple of extra hours for Bond faffing around before he got the car. And then maybe 8 hours for sleep? That brings us to 34 hours. So you're really saying that Bond would have taken 14 hours to shag a waitress? Because honestly, I doubt that even Bond has that kind of stamina. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a second to talk about product placement. You might be expecting me to add a missed sin for all the brands blatantly on display in this film, but instead I'm going to take a note from Cinema Win's book and be positive. Because honestly, I actually like the product placement in these movies. In a lot of movies, seeing a brand on display makes the movie feel kind of cheap, and it might even break your immersion. But when it comes to the Bond movies, I personally think it really fits. Bond is that very specific brand of rich prick who feels the need to make everything he buys be a status symbol. I'm sure you know the kind of guy. The kind of guy who wouldn't say, "Hey, can you pass me my watch?" but instead would say, "Hey, can you pass me my Rolex?" Just because he wants to remind you just how rich he is. His watch is a Rolex, and that makes him better than you fucking peasant. That's why I think brand names feel right at home in the Bond franchise. So long as they don't make a brand deal with like H&M or McDonald's or something, the product placement works here. And you know there are so many, let's say, car manufacturers who would just love to be the car that Bond drives. Just in the same way that you know Bond would love to be that guy who drives that really nice brand of car. Which is why in this franchise I say, bring on the product placement. Okay, that's all. Let's carry on now.
This woman has a Bella from Twilight level obsession with lamps.
Okay, 2 things. The first thing is that there are only 4 fucking lamps in shot here, which for a room this size is a perfectly reasonable quantity of lamps to have. The second thing is that 5th arrow you have on screen is not pointing to a lamp, that is a fucking chandelier. And you know what, I never thought I would have to exasperatedly tell someone this, but chandeliers are not lamps.
This Aston Martin must have rig-like power to be able to speed up another car like this. This scene almost makes me wish we could see that stupid invisible car again.
Jeremy does not realize the oxymoronic nature of wishing he could see an invisible car. Also, come on, a car is just a weight on wheels. If the other car doesn't brake, there is no reason that the Aston shouldn't be able to push it. The real sin here is the fact that the other guy doesn't apply the brakes.
I'm no Bobby Fischer, but I'm pretty sure this is the White Queen right next to the Black King here. So if this is an active board, why is it still going? And if this is an already played board, why is the losing king still standing, as opposed to lying on his side in defeat? Mostly my point is that this chessboard is some bull.
Hey, it is, but then it seems like someone on production noticed this halfway through filming this scene, because when they cut to the close-up of the board, the queen is magically gone. You know, I've never seen a continuity error before. Feels good.
Also, chessboard symbolizes a game that has already been played between these 2 characters, and the dust represents my level of interest in reading into symbolic chessboards.
No one made you read into the symbolism of this chessboard, Jeremy. You just chose to do something that you didn't want to do, and then sinned the movie because you didn't like the choice you made.
Closing the eyelids of a recently deceased person cliché.
Well, yes, it is a cliche, but then again, it's also a way in which most people would behave when confronted with this situation. You may as well have just said, person runs away from danger cliché.
Running around out there with his license to kill.
Cheeky reference to previous Bond film is not appreciated at this point in a 2.5-hour film.
Oh, another reference to this movie's runtime. That's okay though. I suppose I can forgive you for just doing 2 of them, so long as you don't do any more. And I'm sure this will be the last we hear about it, so it's okay. I'm going to add a missed sin here for the weird way that this plane crashing through this building is cut. You see the plane crash through the wood, and then it makes a little bit of distance away from it, and then there's a cut, and the plane is crashing through the wood again. You even hear the sound of the impact twice, so they must have known they were doing this. It feels weird, and I just don't like it.
Did it cross your mind that you led them to me?
Madeline is 100% f***ing correct.
The implications made by this question may certainly be valid, but it's a question and therefore cannot be correct. It could only be correct if it was a statement. And I know, it's a small nitpick, but then again, you've never been above those, have you?
Le Chiffre, Quantum, Sciarra, your friend Mr. Silver.
Movie makes half-assed attempt to link all previous Daniel Craig Bond movies together.
James, I've got the information you need, complete with a fancy custom computer graphic where some lines slowly join up some pictures in the shape of the Spectre logo. Seriously, what? Did Q sit there thinking, I've got this important intel for Bond, he could find it very useful on his mission, but before I tell him what it is, I have to spend my time making a fancy computer graphic to display it in an aesthetically pleasing way.
This organization, do you know what it's called?
No.
Spectre.
Roll credits.
Okay, Jeremy, I appreciate that you're saying roll credits to keep the tradition alive, but sometimes movies are completely reasonably named after a thing from in the movie. When movies are named thusly, it makes not saying the name of the movie in the movie very difficult and unnecessary.
James Bond awakes in the middle of the night to a mouse on the hotel room floor, and his first response is to reach for his weapon. I mean, what? You're gonna shoot a mouse as opposed to just watching it or calling the front desk?
Having actually seen this film, I'm fairly sure this scene was intended to be humorous. Bond is supposed to be bored, he's just messing about. He doesn't actually shoot the mouse, he just interrogates it.
Also, damn, this movie is super long. I think creatively they could have left out the whole Rogue Bond storyline and cut about 15 minutes from this monstrosity.
A third reference to this movie's super long runtime is not appreciated in this almost 17-minute Sins video. But then again, that's okay. I'm sure that's the last time we'll hear anything about this movie's runtime.
Man, what would Bond do without these tell-all reflective surfaces that magically show up before the bad guy does?
You know, reflective surfaces are not a particularly rare thing. In fact, I've recently got into a habit of looking at reflective surfaces to increase my own situational awareness. I can see round corners and behind me and such. And it can actually be pretty fun to freak people out with it by seeing things that they don't think I should be able to see. You know, someone's walking behind me and I address them by name and they're like, what? Anyway, I suppose the purpose of that tangent was just to say this isn't really a thing that was just fabricated for movie purposes. It's a real thing that you can do if you get in the habit of it.
This asshole hasn't just broken Bond's neck yet, which would seem to be easy for him to accomplish. Okay, so this scene suggests Oddjob was seriously about to kill Bond, which later scenes will suggest was not the plan. But whatever, I've long since realized this movie cares zero about logic and common sense.
Those last 2 sins were back to back. One of them was, why is Oddjob trying to kill Bond? He shouldn't be doing that, that's not the plan. And the other one was, why isn't Oddjob killing Bond? He could do it so easily.
None of the guards notice Madeline reaching down where the restraints are.
Okay guards, before Bond arrives, let's just go over this one more time, okay? It is absolutely vital, and I mean vital, that you make sure no one gets their hands near Bond's hands. Even though he's restrained and incapable of almost any movement, he might have an explosive watch that he's managed to slip off his wrist and down into his hand. So if anyone reaches for Bond's hands, this may be an attempt to get the watch, and that might lead to their escape. This is a very real possibility that we need to be aware of, okay? If you're not doing this, honestly, you're not really doing your job. Oh, and also, in this scene, Bond has a hole drilled in his head to alter his brain. However, if you know anything about how brains work, you should know that they are drilling in the wrong fucking place. All they're going to achieve by drilling there is the shutting down of Bond's most basic bodily processes.
It's not over yet.
Movie delights in giving me horrible news about this movie's runtime.
God fucking damn it. Well, I guess that's another sin about the runtime. Please let this be the last one.
You're saying goodbye.
Yes.
I think I figured out this 2.5-hour movie's biggest problem. It's 2.5 hours long!
Fuck.
The bad guys go back to look for M, and here's some ridiculous bullshit that just makes me angry. First off, M needed to crawl over to the driver's side to get out, because his door was too close to the wall to open, so he clearly had no time to do this without getting caught. Their backs were turned for only a few seconds, and he would have had to run down this long-ass tunnel to escape. Second off, why wasn't anyone standing by the car to make sure this didn't happen? Why did they need 2 guys just to open the back of the truck? I'm adding 5 cents more for this because I'm totally certain of how much bullshit it is.
Those previous two sins were back to back. One of them was, I'm pretty sure that couldn't have happened, and the other one was, why didn't they take precautions to prevent that thing that couldn't have happened from happening?
Save yourself and live with the pain.
Okay, first of all, this is a ripoff of many movies where the villain makes the hero choose between saving a loved one and something else. Dark Knight, Spider-Man, Batman Forever, etc.
You're bluffing.
Jeremy started that sin off by saying first of all, and then ended it like he was going to carry on talking. But then the video just carries on with the next sin, and there is no part 2 to that sin at all. Did you maybe edit out a part where you say secondly, and then something else, and forget about it?
You're bluffing.
Remember kids, if you suspect that your enemy might be bluffing, always, and I mean always, tell them that you suspect it. It's vitally important that your enemies have all the same information you do. You wouldn't want to stay a step ahead of them or anything.
2.5-hour movie teases us with a cut to black like it's all over, but it's not over.
You know, I'm beginning to get the impression that Jeremy has some kind of problem with this movie's runtime. Hi, so I've been working very hard with Cloud Eyes recently to bring you this, and if you could check it out, it would be wonderful. Thank you.
Might as well just live it true.